As announced well over a month ago, the Hearts on Fire audiobook has recently been released. These next couple of videos will be my take on this story, but much like the novels I've covered in the past, I'll barely be scratching the surface as far as the detail and the full immersion that the audiobook provides. If you are at all interested in the Division story, of which I assume you would be if you're watching my channel, I strongly urge you to check it out on Audible. They've done an amazing job. Hearts on Fire is set in a time before the existing game franchise, a prequel to the Division 1. The story follows a new recruit called Hoskins. We'll be following Hoskins' journey as she is recruited and brought into the ranks of the SHD, all while maintaining her day job as a firefighter and a paramedic in New York City. Until one day, a biological attack strikes down the city, sending it to the brink of collapse. Hoskins, along with her training partner and fellow agent, are tasked with following the path of a growing hostile presence, calling themselves the Cleaners. Melanie Hoskins is a firefighter paramedic. She has been called to a case where a young boy has fallen from a tree. Yet, in a shaky situation, Hoskins is able to calmly tend to his injuries and bring him back to a stable condition. While packing up and preparing herself for the next emergency call, she is approached by a man in a suit. He compliments her on the excellent job she did while attending to the boy, and comments on how cool she kept herself during the situation, and then proceeds to offer her his business card. He tells her that he is part of another agency and that he has potentially a unique job opportunity for her. Hoskins thanks the man, but explains that she needs to head off to her next call-out as a job has just been dispatched through the radio. En route with her co-worker to the next call-out, she takes a closer look at the card. She can tell that the man she spoke with is from a government agency. Uninterested in whatever he or his agency has to offer, she puts his card aside and carries on with her day. One morning, when arriving at the station to begin her shift, her chief calls her into the office. She has been flagged for routine, mandatory HR harassment training. It has been held downtown. She reluctantly makes her way there. Hoskins eventually arrives at an unmarked building and signs in at the front desk. The lady behind the counter starts off by giving her a number of forms to fill out, non-disclosure agreements, Homeland Security forms. But before she can query this further, and while asking if she's in the right place, a man appears from out of one of the back rooms. It was the man from the other day, the one who had given her the card, but what was he doing here? As it turns out, this whole HR training is just a cover that he's set up so that she is available to talk to him about this job opportunity. Frustrated by his deception, she storms out of the building. He quickly follows her and tries to explain that this is much bigger than him or her, and that the President of the United States needs her help. Startled by this, she laughs, but he assures her that this is very much real. He is a part of an agency that is there to prepare for the very worst, when all other means have failed, that they are the last line of defense. He finally introduces himself as Jason Shu, and goes on to explain that in order for her to know any more than this, that she needs to sign the NDAs and then complete the screening process through to a certain level before he is able to provide any more detail on what this is all about. Hoskins eventually agrees to go back inside with him and make a start on the process. First up, there are the psychometric tests, where her aptitude, personality, and skills would be tested through a number of various scenarios. She successfully completes this step. Shu congratulates her, however he does inform her that this is just the beginning, and that she has at least a year's worth of training and testing ahead of her before she will, or won't be, fully successful in the recruitment process. Shu told her that the agency would be handling all the details in regards to booking out time in her calendar and providing adequate cover stories for her time away from work and her family. He stressed to her that no one, under any circumstances, was to know what she was doing, including her husband and child. Over the next 12 months, Hoskins is put through a number of rigorous and intense courses and training in a variety of different scenarios, including firearms, close quarters combat, equipment like body armor and SHD tech, hostage situations, resilience, judgment, instincts, mental stability, and the ability to make calls that could save or cost lives. During this time, she meets up with another potential agent in training, Anderson, and on the last day, both were given confirmation via their watches that they were successful. Shu approaches the two new agents, and informs them that they are now a part of his cell. Now fully fledged division agents, they will remain inactive until they receive the call. For now, Hoskins is to go back to her normal life, and apart from training exercises that they will complete over time in order to help keep them sharp, she will be stepping away from this life, perhaps forever, providing that there aren't any catastrophic events anytime soon. However, 4 months later, the worst happens. It's Black Friday, and even the terrible weather isn't holding back the thousands of eager shoppers. It isn't too long before people start to get sick, and reports start to come in about a new strange illness striking down seemingly healthy people. As a paramedic, Hoskins is in the thick of it, and has to work day and night due to the sheer scale and spread of this mysterious illness. Isolated from her family, yet in the same house and unable to hug her son, she is doing everything that she can to keep them safe. Her job demands a sacrifice, and she accepts it, but it doesn't make it any easier. Suddenly, and on a day seemingly like every other she's been living lately, after a particularly long shift, her husband notices her watch starting to glow. The severity of this unknown virus has started taking a drastic toll on the people of New York, and it seems that now the time has come where she has been activated and called into action. Hoskin feels like for a second there that her heart has stopped. Is it time? Had things finally gotten so bad that the local authorities can no longer handle this on their own? Clearly confused, her husband watches anxiously as she grabs her go bag that she had hidden away and starts to gear up. Scantech lenses, earpiece, body armor. Getting more and more agitated and alarmed, he tries to question her. What is she doing? Why does she have a gun? And where is she going? Unable to tell him exactly what she's doing or who she works for, Hoskins explains that he and their child need to leave the city as soon as possible, and that she won't be coming with them. That this is something she needs to do, and while he may not understand this, and he needs to know that she's been training for an event like this for some time. Before leaving the house to meet at the rendezvous point with the rest of her cell, she has to make a phone call. Although it's against the rules, she feels she has to tell her sister to get as far away from the city as possible. Hoskins and her sister haven't been close for years, but regardless, she can't just leave her here, unknowing and oblivious to the fact that something big is about to occur. Unfortunately, Johanna is simply convinced that all of this is just something made up by the government to control the population, and that there is no way she's conforming or going anywhere. Hoskins tries to convince her otherwise, and begs her to listen to reason, but unfortunately she has to abandon the call, as her cell is yelling into her earpiece, asking her why she hasn't left yet. Anderson and Hoskins find themselves looking after a Sarah hospital in Lower Manhattan. The medical staff are overwhelmed, and with the sick queuing up down the street, people are scared and understandably starting to panic. It doesn't take long before things begin to get out of control, and suddenly, and without warning, the JTF guards leave and all hell breaks loose. Hoskins and Anderson sense the situation quickly getting out of control as they notice weapons starting to appear within the crowd. They don't want to abandon their post, but with the JTF now gone, they are only moments away from being completely overwhelmed, and they no longer have a choice. They gather the medical personnel and escape the compound, but before they're able to make it very far, there is a loud bang and a blinding burst of light. Anderson quickly drags Hoskins to the side and out of harm's way. They know they need to get as far away as possible from here, yet before they can leave, Anderson stresses he needs to do something, and he needs her help. His family is nearby, and they are being held in quarantine under JTF guard. While this request is completely off mission, Hoskins eventually agrees to help him. However, when they arrive, the JTF are nowhere to be seen. Panicking, Anderson makes his way to where his family is staying, but there is no one around, and the only thing that can be found is scorch marks. Anderson's family has been killed. Unable to hold back his emotions, Anderson is beside himself. Hoskins tries to calm him down, but outside on the street is a group of people. They're wearing gas masks, carrying axes, flamethrowers and other weapons. Attempting to grab his attention and run, her attempts are futile as Anderson is consumed by grief. She stands back helplessly and in shock as he plows headfirst into the crowd to have his vengeance on the people who killed his family.
I got him!
disrupted.
Mortified by what she has just witnessed, but with no time to actually process it, for the group has now turned their attention to her, she runs wildly towards the quarantine wall. The hostiles are chasing her closely behind. She makes it to the wall and frantically climbs to the top, but they have caught up and immediately open fire on her. A bullet finds its target and hits her directly in the stomach. Suddenly, and without warning, one of them drops to the ground, and the others soon start to scramble for cover. Another agent has appeared at the scene and is returning fire. Seeing she is injured, he immediately radios for medical support. The agent that has saved her life is Jason Shu. Before taking her back to base camp, he identifies to her that the hostiles that we're chasing are known as the Cleaners, and that they have been popping up all over the city. And on top of this, a large number of the activated agents are missing. And it appears that this is only just the beginning. Flying in via helicopter, Captain Sanders and his unit of LMB land on the roof of the District Union Bank headquarters. Meeting them is a representative of the bank. Sanders gets straight to work assigning tasks to his team. They are just one of many of the Last Man Battalion units that have been deployed inside the city, and it's their job to secure the digital assets held on site. Taking his intel officer with him, they head down to the basement to check out what they're working with. As New York is a central hub for all of the bank's information, it's too large and sensitive to be transferred remotely. The LMB has been employed to decrypt and back up this information. This process could take up to 13 days, and all while the chaos continues to unfold outside on the streets of Manhattan. 5 days later, and things outside the building continue to get worse. Sanders' soldiers have their work cut out for them, holding off a number of looters and growing hostile groups from entering the building. The bank rep is starting to freak out. He is obviously out of his depth and frustrated with how long he thinks things are taking. Sanders and his team are showing their experience with their calm and patient exterior to the situation at hand. Suddenly, the power goes out, and with no power, the server's backup has halted. Sanders considers his options. With no power, they can't do their job, and it's only a matter of time until their location has the potential to get overwhelmed. His men report to him that there is a group starting fires just down the street from them, and that this is most likely what caused the power to cut off to the block. Sanders quickly heads outside, deciding to have a look at the fast approaching fires for himself. He decides to respond to the threat and takes a squad of his men. They begin moving cautiously towards the fire starters, and he prepares his men to be ready to engage. Two of the unknown persons begin making their way towards Sanders and his men, and the one seemingly to be in charge, Johanna Fisher, shouts out, demanding to know who they are. Sanders responds. As it turns out, they know each other. Sanders and Fisher had once served alongside each other in the military. Each calling off their troops, they agree to reconvene inside the bank. It has been a decade since they served together, and they have a lot to catch up on. All the while, the bank representative is complaining. However, Sanders soon puts him in his place. He explains that the PMC he works for has been employed by the bank to secure some assets, but their burning of buildings on the street has put a halt on their work. They need the power to be returned. Fisher and her people are locals from around this area of Manhattan. They have worked sanitation on these streets before the virus outbreak, and they have exceptional local knowledge on the area, so they agree to guide them to the power grid in exchange for some weapons. Fisher's people take two of Sanders' men through the sewers to a compound that should be able to give them access to the substation grid, while she remains behind so that they can catch up on what's been happening in each other's lives. While waiting on the return of their men, Fisher and Sanders reminisce on what they've been up to. Sanders talks about how he joined the private military company after his time in the military ended, how it's what he knows best, and that it pays a damn sight better than anything else he could be doing. Fisher explains that she's done taking orders, and that she is still struggling to get back into normal life, but isn't willing to go back to military life. She discusses Joe Ferro, their leader, and how he's brought everyone together and is giving everyone a purpose and a logical way to fix this situation. With fire, they will rid the city of the virus. Eventually, the lights turn back on. Their men were successful in securing power back to the building. After they returned, Fisher and her cleaners go back on their way. However, before she leaves, Xanders hands over one of his LMB radios so that they can keep in contact, and he can let them know when their weapons arrive.